Hello, this is Alexa Hampton, and this is 52 weeks of design. Hi, 52 weeks of design live, and today we're going to speak Randy Correll of Ramsa. Hi. Hi.
Hi, Alexa.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Where are you?
Where am I? I'm in upstate New York.
Lucky man. Lucky man.
Well, it's a little gloomy today, but
It is a little gloomy. I can feel some puffiness happening, like it's about to rain.
and
But
a little buggy up here too. So.
at least we're inside. But how are you?
Great.
When are we gonna go upstate together?
Well, I'm thinking at the end of the month I'm going to go there.
I'm definitely going to be up there at the end of the month, and I am so excited. You and I have been working on a project together for the past few years. Obviously, COVID et al. Did nothing to help uh,
No,
the
no,
progress, but it is a heavenly project we're doing.
it is in a beautiful place.
So beautiful. Um, I took my husband and my kids, and they saw the job site, and
Uh,
they jumped into the kids jumped into the water.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so exciting. My husband now is determined that that is a place we need to go regularly, and he fell in love with our clients. And yeah, really, isn't it nice when you have a project like that where you're just so happy to be near it,
Yeah.
happy to be with the homeowners. I've loved working with you and Megan. It's been really nice.
Yeah, it has been. It's a great project.
It's a great project. So, how did you get into this funny world of ours?
Well, I always wanted to be, I guess,
Yeah.
since I was a teenager. I was been drawing house plans, and that was always my fantasy to be an architect. And then when I went to Columbia, I met Bob, and he invited me to work in his office, and the rest is history.
Have you ever worked anywhere else?
No, I mean not in another architect's office. No.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I don't mean like at a filling station or something.
Yeah.
Um, so you have worked at Robert A.M. Stern's office since you got out of college.
Well, yeah, essentially 1980.
That is so cool. And his office, I mean, that's like a powerful bunch of years, right?
Yes.
From 80 to
A lot has happened.
21.
We went from 12 people to a couple hundred people, during that time. And I'm not the only one. I mean, there's a whole cadre of us who have been there that long.
Yeah. Wow. How has it changed for you?
You know,
When did you become, I'm not sure I understand the structure of the firm. It's just partners and then,
yeah.
how's it formed?
Well, I became a partner 20 years ago, and they're now, I think, 16 partners.
Okay, so
Uh,
it's not relatively few.
yeah, and we all have different pursuits. I basically just work on houses, and others do tall high-rise buildings and
Right.
apartment houses, and others are focused on institutional work, college campuses and university buildings. So I mean, it's fun being in a place where a lot of different things are going on at one time.
Of the 16 of you, how many of them have you been working alongside for over 2 decades?
Oh, I would say at least a half a dozen. Actually, two of my partners I was in architecture school with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That is,
Grant Morani and Roger Seifter, who
yeah.
Roger's been there longer than I have, and Grant about the same time, and we're all great friends, and we all work on houses. You've worked with us.
Yeah, amazing. Um, besides our project, which obviously has to go in the annals of your favorites, what are right? What are some of your favorite projects?
Um, you know, as you know, you have to love all your children. So
Yeah, yeah, of course.
yeah, I did a house years ago in Snowmass, Colorado, and it was for like a favorite client, favorite client who actually I just finished a house for in Florida. And I loved going there, and I love that project, and always hoped I'd have another project out there, but never have. So that was really a favorite.
Well, put it out there.
Yeah. And then in Los Angeles, I did a couple houses for really great clients, and I I those were really special projects too. I really enjoyed.
Do you feel like you have an idiom of your own that you like to stick to, or how diverse are your projects in style?
They're pretty diverse. My first projects were in the Hamptons, were shingle style houses, and actually some of my most recent projects are also shingle style houses in the Hamptons. But there's a lot of other things that I've done too. I've done French style houses in the Hamptons, actually a couple, and I've had a lot of work in the last 15 years on the North Shore of Chicago, um, doing stone and
Sure.
brick.
Are we talking like Lake Forest or Evanston or?
Well, Winnetka.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
My aunt lives in Winnetka, so I'm very familiar with Winnetka.
yeah, I love Winnetka. It's so beautiful. So many pretty houses. Unfortunately, my projects have been on the lake, which, as you know, is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize how beautiful Lake Michigan is. It's this turquoise, fantastic body of water. Um, and then I am working on a house in Lake Forest right now, in fact, which is another beautiful place. Big lots and a
Yeah.
lot of historic houses there.
I think what's so beautiful about Winnetka and Lake Forest and other towns in the Midwest, maybe some in Ohio, is that I mean, yes, there are flights of fancy where you'll see some crazy Cinderella castle somewhere, but for the most part, those communities want to have a level of taste, whatever they determine is taste,
Yeah,
and keep it within the vernacular of the area. So you can go for blocks and blocks and just see a whole bunch of beautiful houses that all tie together well and not look like the Hamptons where you get whiplash going from style to style from house
yeah.
to house.
Well, you probably know Winnetka was in fact like a summer uh, colony or summer resort. People in the city would go
I
there.
did not know that. I never knew that.
Yeah, like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then it became suburbanized, probably with the train line extending up there.
So I would imagine also, given what you wrote in your questionnaire, that if you had to keep one book, the David Adler book was so hard to come by. And I agree with you. It was hard to come by and it was expensive. And,
Yes.
and to be kept at all costs in Lake Forest, David Adler land.
Yeah. Well, as you know, other David Adler books have come out that are quite nice and probably better photographs, but that one kind of is special, and
Yeah.
it's black and whiteness.
Yeah.
Uh,
And until this last millennium, it was the only real kind of definitive David Adler book.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just an anecdote. Like 25 years ago, I was at a friend's house upstate, and the local library was having a book sale, and they had that. I saw a man holding that book.
And you tackled him.
I, yeah, I'll give you $20 for that. I mean, all the books were like $1 or
Yeah.
something. And he goes, "Oh no," he goes, "I'm an engineer and I'm really interested in having architect's books." So it took me like 20 years before I got a copy of it.
Yeah. I think we used to have two in the office, and one disappeared under strange circumstances. So the other one got put far back in a way. I'm sure nobody took it. I'm sure I did something stupid with it. So is he one of your favorites?
He is. I would say he's one of the office favorites. We have.
Yeah. What's your short list? And it can like any style, like you could say Laveau, anything.
Well, Harry T. Lindeberg, definitely. Uh, Adler, Charles Platt. Um, those are kind of the big ones I'm always looking at.
Yeah. Any modernists there?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't dislike modernists, but I know that I have when I was a kid, I collected Frank Lloyd Wright books.
I think that was the thing. I mean, my father grew up revering Frank Lloyd Wright, and then just ended up being very obviously not at all
Yeah.
of that ilk, but just he was such a trailblazer for
Yeah.
a huge generation.
Oh, and McKinley and White, of course. I mean, they're like the fathers of shingle
Right.
setup.
Zeus. What does your house look like?
Pardon me?
What does your house look like?
Oh, my house upstate it's tiny. It's from about 1800. Our story is that it was built by a shoemaker, although we have little proof of that. And it's shingled, and we've added porches to it and done filled with it. But it's cute. It's charming.
So you have not felt the need to reinvent it?
No. Paul and I are like hermit crabs. We like to.
I lost your audio for a minute. What was the last thing you said?
Oh,
Your hermit crabs that.
I said we're like hermit crabs. We like to find a shell and then embellish it.
And you have a place in New York as well.
We do, and we have a place in Florida that has been great the last couple of years because we've been spending the winter there.
Oh yes. So you travel all the time for work. So it really doesn't matter where you have a house. You can have one anywhere because you're always bopping around.
Yeah, but I must say, as time goes on, I've been traveling less, I would say, than I used to 20 years ago. And not by choice, just kind of by the luck of the draw where projects have been.
How many projects? Well, I mean, every year can be totally different. What's your idea of the ideal number of projects? Total projects, not picking up stuff. Total number to be involved with per year. What would be your, knowing that they're multi-year processes?
Well, I would say 4 to 6. Yeah. And then, you have longtime clients who you're always fiddling with something,
And it's also great because you know them so well.
Yes. Yeah. I have a longtime client on the vineyard that we're always doing something to her house there, which is fun. I go visit her once a summer and we lay out the plans for the following year.
Right, for what the agenda is. I'm sorry, I have a child. No, you have to, okay, we'll sit with him there. We're trying to keep Percy from making the noise that he's been making in the last few interviews, but he's feeling very clingy. So the process of meeting with an architect is, there's so many people I talk to who become designers. Architecture is just like, everybody loves it, but it's so tough. It's such a huge thing to learn, and then to, obviously we who are not architects desperately need you because it's such an important and serious job. How do you? It can be more amorphous when I meet with a client because you're talking colors and there's going to be this whole process, and a lot of it is mutable and transportable. but obviously the architecture is not, and the architecture is critical importance to get right. How do you figure out what people are really want? Because I'm of the mind that people think they want something and they don't necessarily.
Yeah, you know, that's a good and hard question.
It's a question.
You know, I think the people that hire me or hire our firm come to us either because there's a specific house they want, as was the case with our clients that we're sharing right now, or a friend tells them, you know, that they have to hire us. You know, that their friend had such a great
We like
experience.
those friends.
Yeah, we definitely like those friends. Yeah. Um, it's nobody hires you because they kind of like something you did. I don't know. It has
Yeah,
to
but
be.
how do you root through, people come with a list of things that they want. How do you really get your arm, how do you tease it out of them?
It's funny. Some do and some don't. Some have a whole program written out. In some, it's like a scavenger hunt. You know, they leave little clues and you have to kind of pick up on it and, guess,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty good intuitively,
Yeah.
you know, that I can kind of, I usually am right. But it's helpful when people show you pictures of things they like, or, like a specific house that you've done, and you're never going to do the same house, but at least kind of gives you a starting point.
Yeah. Um, and that I do think playing within a historical framework is helpful in that way, because you're not copying something you've done before. You're
Yeah.
within that style.
Yeah, I think you always have to kind of go back to the primary sources, or your work gets stale. If you just look at what you did last time or last year or
Oh,
10 years,
exactly.
you know.
And that's also like creatively soul deadening if you
Yes.
just repeat yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that we don't all have ticks.
Yeah,
Like you think
sure.
you're being original, and then you look back and you're like, oh, darn it.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody said, Alexa, how big should a living room be? You'd say 22 by 34.
Yeah.
You have a number that you think is right.
Yeah. Um, uh, what has been the biggest change in the last, I'll stop it at 20, because 40, it's too much ground to cover. But in the last 20 years, people are already living in their kitchens, and they're already, TVs are replacing bookcases. So that we know. What else is hugely different?
I think just size and kind of expectation. It used to be that a beach house, well, this goes back more than 20 years, but in the 80s and 90s, a beach house was 5 or 6,000 square feet. I mean, that, is quite
Yeah.
a big house. And people, it's more low key, but now it's kind of 10 to 12,000 square feet. And every finish has to be like really exquisite. It's not just you paint the trim white and the walls
Yeah.
yellow. It's everything is wrought.
I felt for a minute there that houses were getting smaller, and then COVID snapped it right back. Did you
Yeah.
get that impression? Like,
Yeah, I did. But that being said, nobody's asked me to do a small house.
no, and I think the minute COVID hit, like everybody, the whole idea of the compound solidified once more.
Yeah.
You had to have a place where your whole family could stay.
Yes.
Um, when you're working for a client, how important is it how important is the house they live in as a
Well,
as a point of reference, as a clue? Do you
well,
judge people on where they live, or is it good that they have opinions about it?
well, I think, houses take on different importance to different people. We have couples who come to us kind of after the kids have moved out, and you know, they see it as their kind of last hurrah, you know, and they want a house.
As some, I'm sure you've heard this from some of your homeowners. It is their last erection. They frequently say. I'm like, I hope not.
well, I had a couple, you know, a few years back who came to me to do this really over the top apartment in Chicago. They were 80 years old, and I thought, well, that's going to be their last client, their last project, you know. And they came back 5 years later, and we did a house on Lake Michigan.
Well, also, 80 isn't what 80 used to be
Yeah,
at all. Not even remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. Well, they're different things. I love working with people where this is their first big foray, because you can feel excitement and you're excited for them, and it's like, you know, Christmas. But I also love it when it's not their first rodeo, because they now really know, you know, what they, you know, I like my tub to be this big, or I need to have my back, you know, they've lived long enough to have real systems that they respond to.
And I find people over 70 never ask how much something costs.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That is not my experience. Somebody is saying, please tell us some funny story with a client you recently experienced. That covers quite a lot of ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what's the silliest thing that's happened on a job?
I don't know. You tell your story, and I'll think of something.
Well, I will tell a Mario Buata story that I still don't know for sure if it's apocryphal, but it's a great story. It's that, you know, we all did the Architectural Digest show house at the Time Warner building, and the consequence of that is a lot of us got jobs in the Time Warner buildings. And he, somebody's saying they need to marry somebody over 70. I agree. So he met with a client who's an out-of-town client, and a lot of the people who own apartments in that place were. And they hired him. He got the plans. He went in. He did all this stuff. And the client came to see it for the first time, and he had done the wrong apartment. It was the apartment store. Now, again, don't know if this is totally true, but it's such an insane story. I kind of love it. But I also, a huge shipment of outdoor furniture was being sent to my father in the Bahamas, and instead, when they opened the crates, there were only bananas. That's pretty silly.
That is pretty silly. Yeah. Mario Buata.
Our funny stories are usually sort of comedy tragedy.
One of my favorite one-liners was from Mario Buata when he talked about growing up in Staten Island. At Tudor House, it had a front door and a back door.
He was such a funny person. So yeah, speaking of designers and architects, what is the thing that you wish that we decorators, you know, I know that there's sometimes people assume we don't get along, which is silly. But we, from my side of the equation, you know, we can always do better to make sure that we work symbiotically. So what do you wish decorators would do more of to make the experience of working with you more effective, more friendly, more joyful?
Oh, I don't know. I've worked with so many decorators or interior designers, as some prefer to be called.
I say both.
And I've had very few bad experiences.
You're a very friendly person too.
Yeah, and I think I understand what interior designers or decorators do, and what they don't do. And some are more interested in doing some things than others are. Some just want to decorate, and others want to kind of dig into the detail of the architecture more. So,
do you enjoy that kind of a dialogue? Maybe not with the decorator or designer, but with the client. Do you love the person who wants to drill down and talk about the things that that get you going?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's kind of being interested in being meddlesome, you know. So I don't like it, you know, somebody meddling with the plan unless they really have some objection to something, you know, that's happening. And you know, I don't want to meddle with what they're doing either. You know, I like I like to be in the loop of what's happening. Um, and if I'm asked, I'll have an opinion. But
When I start a project, it's always the furniture plan that obviously is my roadmap.
yeah,
Is your, I mean, obviously the footprint is yours, but is it also situating the house on the plot?
well, you know, it is the furniture plan too. You know, I'm drawing furniture in my first sketches because you really need to make sure rooms work. You know, but really, the very first thing is siting the house, um, and getting a sense of how the size of the house on the size on the property, and the orientation of it, and if the lot has slope to it, contours, you know, how you deal with that. So that's really the beginning. But even as you're doing that, there's some inkling of a plan, a floor plan, you know, or a spark of an idea that's going to motivate this design.
What kind of relationship of house to land is the ideal?
Well, you know, the easiest is the Hamptons because you're given a flat, you know, 2 acres of land, you know, and you kind of can't go wrong. Um, and of course, the ideal is to have a water view or some incredible
No, but I
view.
mean, certainly back to what we're saying about the Hamptons, people tend to, well, they're everywhere. People want maximum house. What relationship of land to house do you think is most harmonious? Like percentages, or does it really not
Oh,
matter?
oh, you know that's a good question. I mean, I guess to have enough land that you don't have to worry about the percentages,
Right, right.
you
Because
know.
I look at my parents' house in Southampton, and I'm very, you know, it's a small house, so that's not the issue, but definitely because it used to be a gardener's cottage, it had a relationship to a house that it no longer has a relationship to. You know,
Yes.
because it's been cut off from that house,
Yeah.
and the consequence is that it feels very oddly sited. And I would love to know, what is the process when you're locating a house, um, you know, because it's like you can feel when it's wrong, but you don't necessarily know what the right thing is.
Well, you know, it varies where you are, you know, like how far you feel you need to be from the road if it's a busy road, uh, you know, or if there's a view, kind of how close you
Sure.
need to be to view. And um,
So views are so frequently on the back of the house. Is the back of the house the new front? Is the new front the back? Or has it always been, you know, like, you know, is the gesture on the back more important?
um, no, equally important, because you know you drive up to the front, and that's where the story begins, and you want it to be, you know, and friendly and inviting, or fancy. Of you know, that's your client's fantasy to have a fancy house. You want it to be impressive when you come up.
How much fantasy do you allow?
A lot.
Yeah, I'm deep diving in for myself into, just recently am I embracing the idea that I like fantasy,
A lot. Yeah.
which is hard to reconcile when you're also trying to be appropriate.
Yes. I mean, for myself, if I ever designed a house, you know, I'd go for a Venetian villa, you know,
Yeah.
or one of my favorite houses is Lyndhurst, you know, which
Yeah.
is Gothic. You know, I'd really go for it.
Do you think you'd ever do that?
Yeah, I would.
Do you see yourself building a house?
I hope so.
I
Yeah,
would I would love to see that. You know, I love seeing architects do their thing for themselves.
yeah. But you know, Paul, my husband, not an architect, but I think we'd be wrangling over who's designing the house because he
What
does
does
it.
he do?
Pardon me?
Is he in a compatible profession?
He's retired, but he's artistic. He paints and plays the guitar and
Okay,
land.
he's not allowed then.
Yeah,
He can set the station and the interiors to an extent, but he's got to let you do it then. Do you see a problem with having a Venetian palace in a place that's not Venice?
well, I think the house we might do is in Florida, so there's always
Oh,
pas design,
yeah,
the Ritz mansion, which I
yeah.
so
Are
I,
you in Miami?
pardon me.
Are you in Miami?
No, we're in central Florida on the Indian River.
Because yeah, I love all of the crazy Venetian facades in Miami.
Yeah, yeah. I
Miami
also love the
is
of Art Deco Miami. I could see doing an Art Deco house too.
totally. Would you
None
enjoy
of our
living in an
clients,
Art Deco?
but it's something I'd have to do for myself.
Have you ever in your life worked on an Art Deco house?
No, this house we did in Bel Air 15 years ago. The husband loved Art Deco, actually, and so they're kind of moments, but I wouldn't. I mean, it's definitely not an Art Deco house.
Yeah, the people I've worked for who love Art Deco tend to have been born close to the period, and they look upon it with nostalgia, and they're also totally informed by the black and white movies that they
Yes,
grew up watching. And it's
yes,
like their version. I'm sure you can find a generation of people that want Miami Scarface, and that's very different from people who are growing up watching Fred and Ginger.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we love old movies. I mean, fantasy is to someday go to a nightclub that looked like one from a '30s movie.
Yeah. Um, what was the famous one in New York? The Copacabana
Right, or the Stork Club.
Club. Somebody wants to know that do clients come having seen, well, you've already said seeing the outside of the house. Do they ever come having just really focused on the inside?
Um, hmm. Usually, it's the outside is the motivator. There'll be rooms that they like, but I would never say just one interior would be the motivation, to hire us.
How many projects do you think you get just from photographs, from photography?
Say that again.
How do you think you get a lot of jobs from photography?
Yes, definitely. But you never know. It's never instant. It's like you get something in a magazine, and it's not like your phone is ringing. The
Yeah,
next day. People can kind of file it away and come to you years later, and say that was why they came to you.
yeah, yeah. They wait till they're able to do a house, but they keep
Right,
their wish list.
right, exactly. Mm.
So somebody's asking you right now, how do you navigate a difficult relationship with a client when it comes to possibly having to educate them?
Possibly having what?
To educate them instead of saying yes or no, how do you navigate through that process to get to the answer that you know is right?
Well, there are different levels of education. I think most clients, if they hire you, they trust in your judgment and taste. Um, you educate them, I think, by showing them things, showing them photos and showing them materials and showing them details as you go along, and see, what they respond to.
What is the longest gestation period you've had on a project before you started building?
Oh, I would say 2 years.
That actually, yeah, that doesn't sound surprising to me. But then
Yeah,
probably what, a 3-year build, 2-year conception period?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Here is typical, but we've had some that have gone long.
What's the fastest?
Oh, 9 months like a baby.
9 months?
9 months.
Um, yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Are you interested in ever doing a pattern book
No.
per se? I mean, of like Randy's top favorite. I think it'd be so great to elevate the, you know, there are all these people who build with no architect, like spec building. They just need someone like you to codify, be the Palladio of the Hamptons or of the wherever.
I think it was close to 30 years ago, we did this Life Dream House that
Oh,
Gary Brewer, who uh, had designed. And people to this day will get calls, that they want to do a version of this Life Dream House. So, it is an idea that has legs if
yeah.
they want to pursue it.
It
Uh,
just needs to be done with like a major building concern though. So that like whole neighborhoods could be kind of like what Ben Pentreath is doing in Dorset. You know,
right.
somebody's got to get their hands on the contractors. Um, that would be so great. I would buy a house like that in a heartbeat. Like if David Adler or yours or Peter Benoit or Bill Schaefer, all of you guys. Like if I just had that buy-in from you guys and I knew it was blessed by you all, then I would feel at peace. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense, because you don't want to do anything that's just wrong.
There have been a couple times over the years, I can remember in the Hamptons, some guy was doing this development where he was asking like every famous architect to do a house in it. But I don't think he made it past like 3 or 4 houses.
But he actually made that many. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, programs like that need to come back into vogue.
We did this in the 80s. Some of my first houses were in this development bridge that we did. Um, and we redone a couple of those houses. And actually, somebody came to me, they were buying one. I mean, these houses went for, like $600,000 in they're going for $6 million.
Yeah,
It's astounding.
yeah. What may I ask you a very vulgar question? What do you think? Well, first of all, I'm not going to ask you a vulgar question. It was a money question. I'm going to ask it. What is, like I one day, we have a bad connection all of a sudden. Are you hearing weird things?
No?
No?
You
Okay. I'm hearing weird things. Um, what's the, I would love one day to have a house. I don't know if I can have one with a bazillion bedrooms or whatever, but what would, if you had a good, what a person would consider a normal sized house, whatever that is, how big do you think it would be? Like, what's a normal house these days?
well, I mean, no, no, normal to the world and normal to our clientele are vastly different things. If I were building a house for myself,
Yeah.
I would like 3,000 square feet would be more than enough.
Yeah.
I mean, right now my aggregate real estate holdings are like 3,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah. Which is fantastic.
Yeah. But some of the earlier houses I did in the Hamptons were, 5 to 6,000 feet. And I always found that to be a nice size.
Yeah. When I think of apartments that size, that's gargantuan.
It's huge, huge, right?
So if you could live in an apartment that big most of the time, then you could certainly live in a house that big. So, I mean, I find myself whenever I have more space, I burrow into the smallest areas possible. I like get cozy in a corner somewhere. Uh,
Well, I think the same is true of people who build these big houses. Like they hang out in the kitchen or they hang out in their bedroom or, their office. That most of the house goes unused.
how do you encourage people to use their rooms?
Huh. Well, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, do you have a pathway running centrally through the house so you can at least pass by the rooms and experience them?
Yeah. Well, for instance, the house we're working on together has no dining room, as you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does.
Yeah, but it's more like the breakfast room. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and there was a discussion whether it should have a living room. Whether it needed that. And as you know, we kept the living room, but it's more of
Wait
a
till
pet.
you. When was the last time you were there?
Last month I was there. Yeah, I haven't seen any of your
You
rooms.
haven't seen anything. Okay, good, good,
Oh,
good, good. I'm so excited. The
yeah.
curtains alone. Oh my God. I left the project when we did our first pass, and just came home and wanted to repaint my entire existence because the homeowner for whom we work has I love her palette. It's
Yeah.
really, it's not femme, but there's something dignified about it and sexy, and I'm just ugh. Um,
Well, and she's very earthy, which
very earthy,
I love that
but
about her.
not like hot, not like oranges
Now,
and yeah, she's got a great color sense. I want to live in there are two of the son's rooms that I'm like, it actually hurts my brain to figure out which I like better, which is a good problem.
yeah, cool.
It's so kind of sad when we work on these projects this long, and it's all we want is that end, and it's so exciting, but then we have to leave the house. Why do they
Yeah.
make us leave, Randy? Shouldn't there be like a decorator architect room off to the side for us to come and visit the baby?
It's true. It is, I referenced this client on Martha's Vineyard where I stay, and that house was finished like over 20 years ago, and it's still. I mean, we've refreshed it, but you know, I there's I still love it, and I would do it again. I think it's great to go back. I mean, there's some houses you see and you think, oh, I would have changed this, I would have changed that. But when you can go back to one and say, wow, it's really great just the way it is, it's very satisfying.
Totally. Somebody asked if you have a personal, not a trademark, but like a little flourish that you like to use on jobs.
I always end up with an elliptical window or six.
I kind of think of that as, remember the Hirschfeld with the Ninas?
Yes,
Like
yes.
you just like put a little Nina in and see if anyone finds it, like a little Easter egg. Do you always do the exterior colors on the houses you build?
Oh, I'm always involved in it. You know, if it's a color other than off white, it is such a discussion, I must say.
Uh, yeah, I mean it would be. What is there a default off white that you like using?
Dove white.
That way.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good.
It looks particularly nice with shingles.
Yeah.
It has warmth to it.
And when you don't do a shingle house, do you paint? Like, do you pick out the trim on the exterior as different from the house color,
Yeah.
like you do on the inside?
Yeah. Well, and then when you get into the question of shutter color, that,
That was my next question.
yeah, it's like, blue. Say the word blue and see how many, answers you get to what
Yeah.
blue it should.
Do you have a favorite blue shutter? Because if
You
you could
know,
come up with that right now, I think I would just like that be. I don't need anything for the rest of my life if you can give me a perfect blue shutter color.
it's actually this color. I did on Martha's Vineyard that I love. It's kind of a, it's hard to describe. It's kind of like a blue, not like faded blueberry. I would, would,
So a lot of red to the blue.
yeah,
You know, it's the inn where we stay when we visit our job is a really beautiful medium color blue, but very very saturated color,
yeah.
and it is obviously. Have you worked with Stephen Gembrow?
I have not.
Well, I love his palette too. Like I love his color sense, and I feel like I can always tell a Stephen project by the colors. But though, of course, I haven't seen every project he's ever done. But the exterior of that inn is one of those great colors. And I'm gonna have my painter who's working on that house find out what that color is for me. I'm gonna have him color match it or whatever, because it's really a strikingly dark blue to have on the exterior of a house. But I feel like it's, you know, I would love to have like 5 great real colors that I knew looked good on the outside of the house that weren't gray or white. It's very tricky.
It
And I
is
feel,
very true.
and I get really scared on the exterior because obviously my world is the interior. And
Yeah,
I feel like, you know, I always want the architect to weigh in because you guys have done so many. But
yeah.
it's comforting to know that Dove White is your default because, okay, it doesn't have to be some weird secret handshake color.
Uh-huh. There's a we when we painted our house in Florida, which is stucco, I brought home like 6 colors to show Paul, and we both immediately focused on one called Silver Marlin, and
Uh-huh.
it's a really pretty. It's a Benjamin Moore color that we both love, and it looks nice in any light, and it's kind of just a silvery green color, very pale. So that's a good color to remember.
Silver Marlin. I will remember that. Thank you. Um, when we were when we started working on the house that we were working on, and I've asked other architects this question because I feel like you're in one camp or the other. I believe that you like to screen the view of the big room. You know, many architects will say, "I don't like you to walk into the door and just see everything. I like to block the view as almost, and then have it be like a striptease as you walk in." Then
No, no, we're
do
we're
the other camp.
we're all for it. You open the door and you see the view. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I, you know, I can get both. I totally understand both. But yeah, the only thing I ever worry about when you walk in and see the view, well, then that means it's a hallway. Or do you go straight into the living room?
Well, as you know, the house we're doing together, you see through the porch to the view. You know.
Yes, though it's been closed up for a long time. I haven't really seen through the porch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, that was like really important to have that porch, which you know is a loggia, to be the center of the house because it's all about being out on.
Yeah, when you're on the water, or when you have something really serious to look at.
Right. But I'm just thinking we often it's looking through the entry hall, to the view, but many times it's like looking through the living room, sometimes looking through the dining room, although I don't like opening the door and seeing the dining table as, the view.
Right, especially because it's presumably not seated at. Like, no, it's empty. You come in and see an empty table. That's not a welcome.
No,
That's an
sure.
indictment. That's an accusation. Do you work a lot with the landscape architects?
Yes, yeah. Um,
How into that do you get?
well, a lot. Again, not to meddle, but I love being part of the process of it. Um, because I'm both an amateur decorator and an amateur gardener, so I
Which
enjoy.
is great.
Pardon me.
I think that's great. I wish I knew more about landscape design because I am asked those questions but I do not have credible answers. I wouldn't trust anything I had to say about planting.
Yeah. Well, we've had this house upstate for 15 years, and Paul and I have done the landscape, such as it is. And only recently I'm thinking, I think it's time to bring in a professional to help us.
Yeah, maybe, but he is retired. You got to let the man
Yeah,
do what the man do, and that might be
yeah.
his new canvas.
But there are certain things you look at. I mean, certain things I think we've really gotten right. We put in a pond, and that's like really right. And other things. But then there are things, you look at year after year, and it's like you don't know quite what to do with them. They're not right, but
Yeah,
you don't know what right is. So.
yes, I do about that. Um, yeah. If is there okay? So you mentioned the Villa Borghese in your questionnaire, which is one of my favorite places ever. I mean, how can it not be? And my husband, when we were there, like maybe the first time we were there together, when we were young adults, he was like, I'd love a country house like this. And I was like, great.
you know,
But
I I first saw it like 10 years ago, like on my 6th trip to Rome.
were
And I
you
was
just
like,
like, where the
how
hell
could
have
I
I
not
been?
have seen this? It's like overwhelming the first time you see it. It is overwhelming. It's just like you've eaten like a 7-course French meal. You just need to lay down and take a nap. It's
Yeah.
just too much.
Yes, you want to be like Pauline and just lie back on your chaise. It's obvious calling me, and I need to keep declining the call. Um, it's overwhelming on the one hand, but it is also just so realized.
Yes.
Like it's so everything is so perfectly conceived of, and it has reached maximum. The apotheosis of what it wants to be.
And I love that, half of the rooms are real exquisite marble and half are faux marble. And they're equally beautiful.
And then the follies, like the Egyptian room, which brings me back to fantasy. I feel like, okay, if you can be that fantasy heavy in a place like the Villa Borghese, then anybody can be fantasy heavy, right?
Absolutely.
What are other favorite all time favorite buildings?
Well, I there are gardens. An Italian garden that I think of all the time is Ninfa. Have you ever been there?
Nitfa,
Ninfa, Ninfa. It's a water garden.
like a nymph.
No, Ninfa. And it's all about the movement of water. And it's not like Villa d'Este with big
Yeah,
fountains
yeah,
and
yeah.
things. It's just like these, like water running through the ground or across the ground or over grasses. Um, and it is so subtle and so exquisite. I would definitely recommend your next trip to, I think it's south of Rome, as I recall.
Sure. And are the houses in Italy the things that speak to you most, or of the foreign locations, or are you an English country house, or do you like, French palaces, or
Uh,
have you been to the Far East?
no, I haven't. I haven't.
You have to. You have to go to Japan.
But I would say Italian houses are definitely my cup of tea.
Have you ever worked in Italy?
No, love
Yeah,
to.
me either. We need to get on that.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Sweden? Those
Oh
those
yeah.
are
Oh yeah. Drottningholm is one of my favorite palaces.
yes.
I mean, but I love Russia. I mean, I'm open.
You're a pandemic.
Exactly. And yes, in the Pantheon. Who doesn't love the Pantheon? Speaking of pan. Yeah. Ugh. So if I could have a house, um, of any design, I, as I'm sure you can imagine, would have a Greek revival house, probably like 1840s is
Yeah.
my happy place. Um, I've always thought New Orleans is a great city to go to shop for it, what what style speaks to you because there's so many representatives, right? Um, what would be the city in America like? Would it be Lake Forest or would it be New Orleans or would you go to Bel Air to find the inspiration for the perfect house for a person?
Well, it's funny that you say you love the 1840s because, as you know, in the Hudson River Valley, some of the most beautiful 1840s houses are here. And actually, the staircase of one right outside of Hudson, I copied directly for this house we did on Gin Lane in Southampton. It's such a beautiful stair. Um, and one of my favorite houses, I don't know if you, Edgewater.
Yes, of course,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's just like a dream for me. That's like a dream house.
Yeah, I think there's something like what was going on in 1840 that America has so many great houses from them,
I don't know.
and they're so strict.
Yeah, yeah,
They're not blousy at all. They mean business.
yeah. But there's a kind of an abstractness to them. They're classical houses, but it's not too little and not too much. It's kind of just right.
My husband and I looked at a house in Kinderhook that was an old house that was Palladio inspired, but it's a little house, obviously, and it just had enough. Oh, I know the biggest problem was any other problem could be fixed except where it was located on its property. It was really close to a highway.
Yeah,
And generally, like, I don't care. I'm a New Yorker. I love noise, no problem. But it was just clumsy enough a situation. And the property on which it was, there was a big property, and it could be divided, but there wasn't another place to move it to that was good because there was a lot of marshland and stuff, and it kind of killed me. When we left looking at the house and realized like this just isn't going to work, I wept all the way home.
oh,
But yeah, I think like only a house that if I went to you and built a house, I would feel that way, or if I found the perfect historic house. But those are the only two things that would engage my emotions like
yeah.
that.
Well, that's the problem with the historic houses is they're often close to a road, because the road used to be a dirt path and now it's a state highway.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was so perfectly sized because yeah, it's hard to find a big house, and that's what I was saying to you. Like, what's the proper size for a normal person? I once had somebody come over to our house in the Hamptons and say, "Where's the rest of it?"
Ah!
And I was like, "Nowhere." But it's funny. It's funny. Like people aspire to these huge houses, and I certainly do too. But it's not necessarily in the cards uh, or what I should aspire to. I think we should be we should be having these perfect middle-sized houses.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, to be in a perfect place is kind of more important than being in a perfect house.
Oh well, that's ridiculous. How can you say such a thing? Um, wow, that's shocking. Okay, well, I'm going to have to think about that. When are we going to work together again? Oh, somebody wants to know who was hired first. Randy was hired first.
I was,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, Randy was hired first, and I think you gave me a call saying like we're coming, and I was very excited.
Yeah. Our,
Um,
our client really wanted you, though, too. So,
and she got me.
yeah.
She had me at hello. Um, yeah, if somebody wanted to hire you, how difficult would it be for them to hire you? Do they have to go through a rigorous process, or they could just pick up the phone and that's it?
That's it. I it. I hope people don't think it is a rigorous process
No,
because
but I mean, the Ramsa is obviously, a huge name, and you know,
yeah. Well, I unfortunately I think people get put off by that
I don't think
sometimes.
they're put off. I think maybe intimidated, but not put off.
Intimidated, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that it's a big firm and we do, 100 different kinds of buildings, and um, am I going to get the right attention? And the answer is, all I do is houses, and I'm interested in, doing your project. If you're interested in having us do it, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think Randy and I are going to put it out there that we would love to work together again. At least I would. And we're around to be hired. And we don't require that it be a 10,000 square foot house.
No.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for taking the time to
Thank
talk.
you.
I wish I could share with people how much fun it's been working with you, and how, as you say, if people are intimidated, um, my experience of working with you has just been like ease and comfort. And I feel like I'm never in danger. I can ask you anything, and you're always going to aim me in the right way. So it's been an incredible, incredible experience. I'm so looking forward to us getting to toast each other in the finished product.
Yes, I am too.
So to that,
Good.
I will see you soon, and I send you lots of love.
Love to you too, Alexa.